make a quick video about periodization. And so I have an athlete, he's a triathlete. He's probably got about, I don't know, probably 10 years of racing under his belt, but he's had a long layoff. And so he started, well, yesterday was his first day back triathlon training. And he also, something to note about him is he had an injury at the last year, and so he didn't do any type of endurance or aerobic training for probably, I don't know, 6 to 9 months maybe. But he has signed up for Wildflower, which is a half Ironman, very hilly, actually a very hard course. And so we put together a plan for him, and I'm just going to go and show you how I have periodized or structured his training leading up to his A race or his key race or his goal race. So I'm going to turn this. I do use Training Peaks. At the very top we hit ATP, or his annual training plan. And you can see, I'm going to move this a little bit as I talk. But you can see right here that he has 16 weeks. So this right here is weeks to event. You see this right here, weeks to event. You can slide this over. So there it is weeks to event, and then the week. So this is January 6th through 12th, 16 weeks to his event. And then as we pan out here, you can see how I have broken up his blocks of training. And really what I want to talk about is specificity. So what you should be doing in your training is, the closer to the race or event that you want to do well at, the more specific your training should be to that event. So if your race is a sprint distance triathlon, as you get closer to that race, you're definitely going to be doing a ton of like threshold work, VO2 work, past threshold work, because those races are very fast and very hard. This happens to be a half Ironman, which is really endurance and muscular endurance. You shouldn't be going, too hard in those events, but it's short enough that you can go hard. So you can see we have 16 weeks. The red right down here is his race week. He's got a peak week. And so he is starting out with, Training Peaks calls it base 1, week 1 through 4, base 2, week 1 through 4. And each week you're just progressing either the load, you're just pulling levers, right? So you're increasing the load or the intensity. And then week 4 is generally a recovery week. This athlete in particular usually only needs about 3 or 4 days to recover. So that 4th week, you don't actually lose that entire 4th week, which is good, but some people may need it. So in these base weeks, what we're looking to do is just build on his endurance and his consistency. And so that's what he's gonna be doing for the next 2 months. Then we'll move into the build, and he has a build 1 and a build 2. And again, it's broken down into 4 weeks. But again, his 4th week, he doesn't lose entirely. He usually loses about half the week, so we can kind of get going back to work. Now, because he only has 16 weeks, you can see that build 2 only has 3 weeks. But we're gonna go push through those weeks. This is gonna be a recovery week, this peak week, and this week is gonna end in him racing the Orange County Triathlon, and then the next week he'll be racing the Wildflower Long Course. So what does that look like for a half Ironman race? What he'll be focusing on again in these first 2 months, base 1 and base 2, is just building endurance, maybe a little bit of muscular endurance here in base 2. And then in these build weeks, build 1 and build 2, he's going to be working on his training. Actually will be built around his target paces. So on the bike he uses power, on the run he uses heart rate and pace. And so the training in those 2 weeks, these build weeks, is going to replicate as specific as possible as what he hopes to do, or what we project he should do or try to do down here on the race week down there. So 16 weeks. A lot of times you'll add, sorry about that. A lot of times you'll add 2 peak weeks, like if you're doing a giant Ironman block and you just have tons of volume, sometimes it does take 2 weeks or 3 weeks to shed all that fatigue. The goal is always to show up on the starting line fresh and healthy, healthy being the number one thing. A lot of athletes show up on race day injured, and obviously that's going to impact your performance. It's not going to be a great race for you. And so, yeah, I just wanted to break down that periodization and why it's so important. You can't do the same thing day in and day out every year. You can't train hard every single day. You can't just go all out and kind of willy-nilly it. If you're really looking for your best performance, periodization is the way to go. Not just triathlon, cycling, and in, well, really any sport. I do a lot of CrossFit, and CrossFit has just released their games, kind of their schedule and scheming how they're going to do it. And one of the biggest complaints with CrossFit is that they're constantly changing how they run the competition and the events they run and stuff like that. So if you're a high-end CrossFit athlete, it becomes harder and harder to train for that specificity of the event. It just makes it that much harder. So literally in every single sport, this is important. And so, yeah, there you go. Periodization and specificity. Oh, also, to speak more about the specificity, Wildflower is a very hilly course, the run in particular. And so as we get into that build 1 and build 2, there will be a lot of hill training in his training. Hill repeats. His runs will be trail runs with a lot of rolling terrain, and it has one big giant hill that you have to run down and run back up. And so the training will reflect that, so his body is ready to perform in those conditions and in that environment on race day. So there you go. Periodization and specificity.